Eze might not be the only sort of hijack, if you like, because there have been reliable reports that Arsenal are looking at Bayer Leverkusen defender Piero Hincapie. I think David Ornstein broke the news barely an hour after Fabrizio Romano said that Spurs had that they were firming up their proposal for a loan with an obligation. Now Arsenal are working on a deal. They've been running the rule over him for quite a while, but the deal is dependent on exits, most likely Jakub Kiwior, maybe Zinchenko as well. Just looking at the finances first of all. So his release clause, I think, is about £52 million, but he's pushing to get that lowered to maybe under 40 million for a 23-year-old versatile Bundesliga invincible full international. Just first of all, is that a good deal financially for Arsenal?
I mean, it's not a bad deal financially for Arsenal. It's one that surprised me, I have to say. I thought after Eze it was all going to be about recouping some money. And, if you're selling Jakub Kiwior, it looks like you're going to be spending that money and more to bring in a replacement straight away. So it has surprised me. But Mikel's very, very keen to have two players in every single position in this squad. The whole summer's been about raising not just the level of the 11, but really raising the level of the squad. So you can understand the appeal in it, but it is one that's caught me a little bit by surprise. I have to say, I wasn't expecting it after the Eze deal. It is, like you said, sort of dependent on a couple of departures. Certainly one high profile departure, which, like you said, will be Kivior's to Porto if that deal can be agreed, which sounds like it is getting closer to being agreed. So we'll see whether Arsenal can. I mean, I just think financially, Arsenal spent an awful lot of money, and it's it's not going to leave them that much wiggle room going forward. I think they're fine with Premier League, but UEFA is a lot tighter with the UEFA regulations, and so there's going to have to be some balancing of the books done at some point. When you just look at the sheer level of investment that Arsenal have made this summer, to continue investing, it's going to be an interesting one to see exactly what they do over the next week. But he looks like a good signing. He looks like a very good signing. For people who know him far more about him than I do, that I spoke to about him, he's quick. He can play as an overlapping left back, can play as that left-sided centre back. So it's a perfect cover for Kiwior. It does sound like he's more of a sort of traditional left back when he plays in that role than maybe what Arsenal have got in terms of hugging the touchline. Which, if you just signed Eze, who you're planning to play on the left, and he likes to come inside, maybe that's a reason for sort of accelerating this move now. Again, whether they can get it done in some sort of loan agreement and then pay the money from in next season's books, that might be a way around it for Arsenal. So I'm sure there's some dealing to be done by Andrea Berta in the last sort of 6 days of the transfer window, whatever it is, and it'll be interesting to see what he can get done.
Absolutely, yeah. Because, like you say, with the finance, it does seem like okay, where are Arsenal getting all this money from? Because they're not selling players at very high prices, and as
Mm.
well as the financial aspect, there is also, like you say, Arteta wants two sort of starters in every position, but right now. I think yeah, the only real high profile exits have been the likes of well, the only players that Arsenal have sold for a fee this summer have been Nuno Tavares and Marquinhos, bringing in about sort of £10 million combined. You'd expect that this next week, if regardless of the Hincapie deal, outgoings will be the focus. But as important as squad depth is there the risk that Arsenal could be going too far in the other direction and having too bloated a squad?
I don't think it's too bloated. I mean, yes, in terms of there's definitely some what I hate describing players as this, but the sort of the dead wood in the squad. You've got to shift. Obviously, you're talking about your Sambis, your Fabio Vieiras, get there, and they should get good moves and get these moves, get their careers going again. But once you've got those players out the door, I think the squad, as long as it's managed right, and I think we've seen good signs from Arteta so far. Both Premier League games, he's made 5 substitutions in those games. Some of them being injury enforced substitutions, but he's used his bench to the max in those games. Martinelli started against Man United, doesn't play at all in the next game. Leandro Trossard doesn't play at all against Man United, comes on in the next game. Madueke doesn't start against United, starts the next game. So I think what we've seen from Arteta so far is relatively positive in terms of how he uses his squad. So as long as he continues that and he gets everyone minutes constantly, and he uses these players that he's looked at and he's pushed to bring in to really strengthen the squad, then I don't really see too much of an issue with it. The issue comes if he suddenly goes back to what we've seen from Arteta and loses trust in players, and then suddenly the numbers that he's got to choose from between are sort of a squad of 15, 16, 17 rather than 2021, something like that. So as long as Arteta changes a little bit from what we've seen from him in the past, then I don't really see it as too much of an issue. But that's what's going to be the important thing here, is whether Mikel does trust these players enough to really be able to use them and give them the minutes that they need to stay in rhythm and not become a problem, disillusion behind the scenes.